Hello and welcome to another exam paper walkthrough. Today we are sticking with the very current Edexcel papers. Today we're looking at set 22 of their practice paper range. This is the 2H/3H calculator. So they write one paper in these later practice tests to cover content from paper 2 or paper 3. This was written in spring 23, so very modern paper. It's suggested that this should be an 80-mark question done in about an hour and a half. Only other thing I will mention before I get straight in, I'll be doing this the same format as usual. I'll be doing it in chunks of 10 questions, and I'll do a page of solutions, then I'll use the mark scheme to check my answers. The thing that I noticed earlier, not that it's overly important, just this information on this practice set of paper. The marks for each question are shown in brackets. Use this as a guide as to how much time to spend on each question. I think that's quite a useful bit of information. I say that a lot in exams. It's nice to see it from the exam boards. And also, the questions are in order of mean difficulty as found by students achieving a grade 7. I just thought that was quite an interesting addition that I'd not spotted before. I'm using the emulator for the FX82 range. I know that you've got most of you have probably got a much more modern version of this calculator. I have kind of got an emulator for this, but it's as a Word page, which is a bit awkward. So I'm going to be sticking to my old-fashioned emulator for today. Okay, let's kick off then. So question 1. 22 questions, so it'll be, we'll see, I might cut it down to 2 videos, depending on timing. So here are 5 cards. Each card has a number written on it, and we've got some of them and one with an X on. The mean of the 5 numbers is 12. Work out the value of X. Okay, so for this, I'm going to kind of set it up as an equation just to make it clear what I'm going to do. I'll talk you through that in a second. Right, so I'm going to just show what these numbers add up to currently. So if I use my calculator, 15 plus 7 minus 2 plus 23, they add up currently to 43. So in effect, X plus 43 has to be equal to 12 times by 5. So X plus 43 has to be equal to 60. So X has got to be equal to 17. So I'm going X is equal to 17. And that's the only question on that page. So if we go straight to the mark scheme, change pen for this. So M1 for method to find the total of the 5 numbers or setting up an equation in X. So I've got my first method mark for that part there. M1 for forming an equation with their 60. Actually, so realistically, I could have picked up that first one, M1 there, and then that becomes the second method mark, and then A1 for 17. Okay, question 2 then. Okay, the table gives information about the population, correct 2 significant figures of each of 5 cities in 2018. Okay, write 8.8 times 10 to the 6 as an ordinary number. Well, an 8 with 6 zeros would be 8 million. So I've got that same power, 860,000. Which of these cities have the least population? I need to look, really, it is the power of 10 that tells you the size numbers. So these are all to the power 6, these are to the power 7. So it's got to be one of these 3, and then it's whichever has the smaller number. So I'm looking at Barcelona for that. And part C, work out the difference between the population of Tokyo and the population of Ahmedabad in 2018. Giving your answer in standard form, correct 2 significant figures. So I'm looking at the difference between Tokyo and this one. So I'm going to say, so realistically, I want to do on my calculator 3.7 times 10 to the 7 minus 7.7 times 10 to the 6. I'm going to try this without a calculator, and then I'll use the calculator to just double check this for me. So I'm going to say that this is 3.7 times 10. Let me just spread that out a little bit, times 10 to the 7. And I'm going to subtract from it, and I'm going to convert this into 0.77 times 10 to the 6. So if I subtract those numbers away from each other, so the 2.93 times 10 to the 6 is going to be my answer. It says to two significant figures, though. So to two significant figures, I'm looking at 2.9 times 10 to the 6 in standard form. And again, we can just double check that. 2.7 times 10 to the 7 minus 7.7 times 10 to the 6 gives me, and in standard form, that would be 2.9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, good point. So I've messed up. Good to check. I said I was converting them both to be in the same base, but I didn't do it here. Right, and that's it for that page. So if I go to the mark scheme. Right, question 2A, I'm looking at, and I've done a misprint, so that should have been an 8. Right, so it was B1 for that, and for Barcelona, B1. And then finally, M1 for okay. Okay, so what the mark scheme actually says is M1 allow 2.9 times 10 to the n, where n is a number other than 7, which doesn't seem to be a method mark. But then it shows it as a method. That's the notes column that I'm disagreeing with. So I'm going to go M1. Actually, I'll put it, imagining I didn't do it without a calculator. M1, A1, the 2 marks. Okay, and that brings us on to question 3. So for question 3, solve showing clear algebraic working. Okay, so I'm going to start by timesing both sides by 10, and that will give me 10p is equal to 3p minus 5, and that just gets rid of the denominator. I'm going to take my p's over to this side, so I'm going to say that 7p is going to be equal to minus 5. So p is going to be equal to minus 5 over 7. And I'm going to leave it like that. Could go decimal, but there's no point, so I will stick with that. Okay, question 4 then. Write 12,000 as a 1,200 as a product of its prime powers. Show you're working clearly. Okay, so in effect, it's pushing you at a factor tree. I tend to always take 2 out as my common factors, so we'll do it that way. So I'm going to say that's 2 times by 600, which is 2 times by 300, which is 2 times by 150, which is 2 times by 75, which is 3 times by 25, which is 5 times by 5. So I'm looking at the product of its prime factors. That would be 2 to the power 1, 2, 3, 4 times by 3 times by 5 squared. And calculators at paper, so I'm just going to double check. Let me know if I've made any silly mistake. There we go. So I should be fine with that. Just checking I've got the right number to start with. I have. Okay, and what does the mark scheme say then? So let's have a quick look. This was question 3. So we're saying M1 for correct first step, which would be multiplying by 10. So M1 picked up quite early on there. And M1 for collecting terms in P on one side and numbers on the other. So that's my second M mark, and then an A mark for -5/7. And again, it does say that you can accept -0.71 or even -0.7 if you have seen -5/7 or -5 divided by 7. Okay, and question 4 then. Right, M1 for at least 2 correct stages in the prime factorization. So I've got 1 stage there, 2 stage there, so I'm going to award the first M mark there. M1 for finding the correct prime factorization, condone inclusions of 1, so I'll get my second M1 there, and then A1 for my final answer. Right. Okay, question 5 then. So Jane brought a car for £18,000. The car depreciated. I sometimes get numbers stuck in my head from papers. Okay. Jane brought a car for 18,000. The car depreciated in value by 15% each year. Work out the value of the car at the end of 4 years. So if we have a depreciation of 15%, that's the same as 0.85 as a multiplier. So to work out the value of the car at the end of the 4 years, I'm going to do 18,000, the initial amount, times by the percentage multiplier to the number of years. So in this case, to 4. Let's just give your answer to the nearest pound. Right, so type it into my calculator. So that's my exact value. So 9396.1125. So to the nearest pound, then that would be just 9,396. Right. Question 6. Cinema increases the cost of an adult ticket by 12%. After the increase, the cost of the adult ticket was £18.20. Work out the cost of the adult ticket before the increase. I'm going to almost do it in a similar way. So 12% as a decimal multiplier would be 1.12. So to work out my initial price, I divide by the multiplier instead of timesing by it. So I'm looking at 18.2 divided by 1.12, and that gives me £16.25. Right, we got any more on that page? That is it. So the mark scheme says for question 5, we are looking at so if you've done this step by step, so times by 0, okay. So you've done it a year at a time and then readjusted each time, you can get this through by 2 M1 marks. But it says an M2 for 18,000 times by 0.85 to the power 4. So I pick up an M2 there and then an A1 there. And you don't lose a mark if you've not rounded correctly there. Question 16, cinema increases. So M1 for showing the percentage multiplier, which I did there. Second M1 for a complete method. And then an A1 mark for the answer. Okay then, question 7. Diagram shows a quadrilateral. And then we've got the quadrilateral. In the diagrams, ABC and DAC are right angle triangles, which shown in the diagram. We're given the 2 lengths. The area of the quadrilateral is 31.5. Work out the length of AD. So I need to work out this length here. So I'm going to call this X. To help me out with this as well, I'm going to work out this length here, Y. Okay, so let me just check 6 marks. That does make sense. So I'm going to do this as two-stage Pythag, and then I'm going to have to do a bit of calculations involving area. So first of all, I'm going to say that y squared is going to be equal to 7.5 squared minus 6 squared. Alternatively, I'm just going to type it in like that for now. So y is going to be equal to the square root of 7.5 squared minus 6 squared. So Pythag to find the shorter side. So we're looking at 4.5. Okay, so I'm going to actually have to stop there. I am, yeah, but that's fine. So what I'm going to say is that triangle ADC, so the area of ADC is going to be equal to the total area minus the area of the triangle. So minus a half of 4.5 times by 6. So the area of that is going to be, I'll type it in, minus 0.5 times by 4.5 times by 6. So the area of that shape is 18. So well, the area of a triangle is equal to half base times height. If I wanted to work out the, let's call it the height, to rearrange that, then I'm going to say that 2 lots of the area divided by the, so in effect, I've done 2 steps there, times by 2, and then divide by the base is going to be equal to the height. So X is going to be equal to 2 times by 18 divided by, I think it was 7.5, just double check. Yep, there we go. So 2 times by the answer, and then I want to divide that by 7.5. So 4.8. So X is going to be equal to 4.8. I'm going to kind of section this off into the stages that I did it. Just to make it a little bit clearer. That's the first step. That's my second step. That's my third step. Right. Is that the only question on the page? It is. So if I go to the mark scheme, M1 for correct first steps to find AB. And it's suggesting, first of all, it is just kind of getting my head around it. It's an M1 for correct first step to find AB and M1 for complete method to find AB. So I'm going to go M1 there and then M1 there. Right, from there, M1 follow through for a half of okay. Section that off overly well. Right. So actually they've gone for, yeah, that makes some sense. Okay. They've gone M1 for that and then M1 for that. And then M1 for complete method to find AD. So that's my method. Okay, and I'm going to just relabel that A1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, that's right. We'll put the A1 there on the answer line. Okay, question 8 then. So for question 8, we're looking at Diagram shows a solid cylinder made from iron, so that might be a density question. Cylinder has a diameter of 18 centimeters and a height of 3.5 centimeters. The mass of the cylinder is 7.04 kilograms. Work out the density of the iron, giving your answer in grams per centimeter cubed. Correct to two significant figures. Okay, so we're going to start by working out the volume of that cylinder. So the volume of that cylinder is going to be equal to the area of the circle, which would be pi r squared, times by the height. So in this case, I'm looking at pi times by the radius would be 9 squared times by 3.5. So I'm going to leave my answer in terms of pi for now, just because I want a pretty exact calculation for now. So I'm going to call that pi times by 567 over 2 for now. Obviously, I've not written that particularly well. It should be 567 over 2 pi, but we'll leave it like that. I'm now going to look at density. So density is equal to mass divided by volume. The unit that I'm after, though, is in grams per centimeter cubed. Let's just clear up. The volume is in centimeter cubed, but the mass is not in kilograms. So I'm going to just say that the mass is going to be equal to 7.04 times by 1,000 grams. So that's going to be 7,040 grams. So I'm going to say that my mass divided by volume is going to be 7040 divided by, and I'm just going to put V because that's the last figure I had in my calculator, kind of. So that's the actual volume. So I'm then going to go type it as a fraction, 7040 divided by the answer I just had on my calculator. So I'm looking at 7.90441 ... just to show that there are more digits and that I haven't rounded. Giving your answer correct to two significant figures. So my answer to two significant figures would be 7.9. Right, and we'll go to the mark scheme then. So let's look. M1 for correct method to calculate the volume, and they have given it as a decimal or as the version that I've given there. So I've got an M1 there. Correct method to calculate density. If volume is incorrect, their value can be used if clearly labeled, except 7.04 or an incorrect version for, so we'll go M1 and then an A1 for 7.9. Right, question 9. Diagram shows a shape made from a square and 4 identical semicircles. As shown in the diagram, the semicircles have AB, BC, CD, and DA as diameters. The area of the square is 36. Calculate the total area of the shape, giving your answer correct to one decimal place. So 36 centimeters squared, and if this is a square, it must be, so let's show it. The square root of 36 is equal to 6. So each dimension has got to be 6 centimeters. So in effect, that tells me then that the total area of the shape is going to be equal to 2 of those circles. If the diameter is 6, then the radius would be 2. So I want 2 lots of pi r squared, pi times 3 squared, and to that I need to add on 36. So that's going to be equal to, and I can type it in just like that. So I'm looking at 2 times by shift pi times by 3 squared times plus 36. So I'm looking at 92.54. So I'm going to go, the area is 92.548667 ... So to one decimal place, that's going to be 92.5. Okay, and I know I said I'd do this in chunks of 10 questions, but I'm going to cut that short. as I need to nip and do something quickly, and I'll carry on the videos shortly.